My name is Alyssa Carter, and for most of my life, I've been known as the woman who always managed everything on her own. My job, my bills, my daughter, and every little storm life ever threw at me. I'm a single black mother living in a small, quiet neighborhood just outside Atlanta. I work double shifts at a private hospital as a night nurse. I love my job, but anyone who has ever worked nights knows one cruel truth. You miss a lot of your child's life. That guilt was the reason I hired a maid. Her name was Mariella. I didn't know it then, but letting that woman into my home was the very thing that would shatter the safe little world I thought I'd built for my daughter, Zoe. Zoe is 6 years old, curly hair, big brown eyes, a laugh so bright it could warm up an entire room. She used to sleep with her favorite stuffed bunny tucked against her cheek. Used to. The first signs were small, so small I almost didn't notice them. But sometimes, the things we brush aside end up being the very warnings we should have listened to. It started on a Monday morning, after one of my 12-hour night shifts. I came home exhausted, my scrubs wrinkled, my hair barely hanging on in a bun. I expected to find Zoe eating breakfast or playing with her dolls. Instead, she was sitting on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the blank TV screen. "Baby?" I asked gently. "You okay?" She literally jumped like someone had startled her in her sleep. Her little hands trembled as she looked up at me. "Mama, you're home early." Early? It was 7:30 a.m. I always came home at 7:30 a.m. Before I could ask anything else, Mariella appeared from the kitchen, her apron perfectly folded, her hair tied back neatly. "Good morning, Miss Alyssa," she said with her usual gentle smile. "Zoe just woke up. She's a bit tired today." But there was something in the way she said it that made my skin prickle. Too quick, too prepared, like she'd rehearsed the line. I brushed it off. I was exhausted, and I didn't want to be the paranoid mom. "All right," I sighed. "Come here, Zoe." She came, but slowly, and when I hugged her, I felt her little heart pounding too fast. I didn't think much of it. Kids have weird days, but that wasn't the only thing. The next night, around 2 a.m., when I was making my rounds at the hospital, my phone buzzed. It was a missed call from home. When I checked the baby monitor app I kept on my phone, I saw Zoe sitting up in bed, crying silently. Not the loud, dramatic cry of a startled child. No, this was different. Quiet, restrained, like she didn't want anyone to hear her. My stomach twisted. I messaged Mariella through the home intercom app. "Alyssa, is everything okay?" "Mariella, she had a nightmare. I'm with her. Go back to work." Something felt wrong. But what could I do? Leave my job mid-shift without an emergency? I stayed glued to my phone screen for 10 minutes, maybe more. Zoe eventually lay back down, but she didn't look comforted. She just looked scared. I told myself I'd talk to her in the morning, but the next day she didn't want to talk at all. On Wednesday, Zoe refused to go into her room alone. She stood in the doorway, clutching her bunny against her chest as if the air inside her own bedroom might swallow her. "Mama," she whispered, "can I sleep in your bed tonight?" "Of course, baby," I said, rubbing her back. "But why?" She pressed her lips together, opened them, closed them again. Then she looked over her shoulder toward the hallway like she was checking if someone was listening. When she realized Mariella wasn't nearby, she tugged on my sleeve. "Mama, can you lock my door at night?" My heart dropped. I knelt in front of her so we were eye to eye. "No one is going to hurt you, Zoe," I said firmly. But inside, I felt a cold, creeping fear I couldn't explain. Later that day, I asked Mariella casually, "Has Zoe been having nightmares?" "Oh yes," she answered far too quickly. "She cries a lot at night, but don't worry. I take care of her." Take care of her. The phrasing made something deep in me recoil. Still, I told myself I was overthinking. I was tired, stressed. Zoe missed me. That was all. But deep down, a mother's instinct whispered, "No, Alyssa, something is wrong." 2 days later, I came home early from work because a storm had knocked out power in part of the hospital. I walked quietly into the house and noticed the hallway light near Zoe's room was on. Odd. Zoe should have been sleeping. Mariella should have been in the guest room. I moved closer, and that's when I saw it. Zoe's bedroom door was cracked open, just slightly. A warm sliver of yellow light spilled across the carpet. My breath caught. I stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. Inside the room, I could hear soft breathing. Not the peaceful breathing of a sleeping child. More like trembling. I pushed the door gently, and there was Zoe wide awake, curled up tightly, her eyes glossy with fear. "Baby, why are you awake?" I whispered. She didn't answer. She looked past me. My pulse spiked. I turned instinctively, but no one was there. Still, the look on her face. It was like someone had been there. Someone who shouldn't have been. I scooped her into my arms, her small body stiff like she was bracing for something. She trembled against my chest, holding me like she hadn't seen me in months. "Mama," she whispered into my shoulder, "please don't leave me tonight." The way she said it was fear, not childish clinginess. And I realized then I couldn't ignore this anymore. When I tucked her into my bed that night and watched her slowly fall asleep beside me, my mind raced through every possibility, every explanation, every instinct that screamed the same truth. Something was happening in my home. Something Zoe was too scared to say. Something that always happened at night. And I needed to find out what, no matter what it cost me. That was the night I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to install a hidden camera. The next morning after Zoe slept in my bed, I woke up to the soft sound of her breathing. For the first time in days, she wasn't shaking or whimpering in her sleep. She was curled against me, her tiny fingers gripping my shirt like she feared I'd disappear if she let go. I brushed a curl off her forehead. "Baby," I whispered, "Mama's right here." She stirred slightly but didn't wake. I carefully slipped out of bed so I could start breakfast. But the moment my feet hit the floor, she jolted upright, eyes wide, breathing fast. "Mama, don't go," she cried. My heart almost broke. "I'm just going to the kitchen," I reassured her. "I'm not leaving the house." Zoe studied my face for a long second, trying to figure out if she could trust that answer. Finally, she nodded, but hesitantly. She followed me down the hallway, staying close behind me like my shadow. When we reached the kitchen, she climbed onto a chair and sat quietly, hugging her bunny, except this time, she kept glancing toward the living room, then toward the hallway, then toward the guest room downstairs where Mariella usually slept. It was like she was scanning for danger. I made pancakes, her favorite. Usually she would giggle when I burned one or try to flip her own. But that morning, she didn't move, didn't smile, didn't even hum. She just stared at her plate, poking the pancake with her fork. I sat across from her. "Zoe," I whispered, "is someone scaring you at night?" Her shoulders tensed. She didn't look up. She didn't answer. She just gripped her fork tighter. Before I could say anything else, the front door opened and Mariella walked in, smiling like she hadn't a single worry in the world. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "I came a little early to catch up on laundry." Zoe froze, literally froze, like a rabbit sensing a predator. Mariella didn't even notice the way Zoe clung to the chair. She walked to the sink, humming softly. I watched them both carefully, my daughter trembling, my maid pretending not to see it. That was the moment I knew something wasn't just off. Something was wrong. That afternoon, I pretended to take a nap on the couch so I could listen. I kept one ear open for anything unusual. At one point, I heard footsteps go upstairs, then quiet whispers, then nothing. When I got up, Zoe was sitting in her room, staring at the wall. Mariella was nowhere to be found. "Baby?" I whispered. "What are you doing?" Zoe didn't look at me. She didn't blink. She looked numb. I lifted her onto my lap, rubbing her back. "Talk to me," I begged softly. "Tell me anything. Please." Her lips trembled, but before she could say a word, I heard footsteps coming upstairs. Zoe instantly clamped her mouth shut and pulled away from me, shaking her head violently, as if she were afraid of being seen talking to me. Mariella appeared in the doorway. "Oh, you're awake," she said like nothing was wrong. I just put away Zoe's winter clothes. Zoe practically melted into my side, gripping my shirt again. Mariella noticed, and something dark flickered in her eyes, so quick I almost doubted I saw it. Almost. I stood. Zoe and I are going to the grocery store, I said firmly. Oh, I can watch her if you like, Mariella offered, still smiling. No, I said without a pause. She's coming with me. It was the first time her smile slipped. Just a fraction. Just enough for me to finally trust that instinct screaming inside me. At the store, Zoe seemed lighter, safer. Like the moment we walked out of the house, some invisible weight lifted from her tiny shoulders. While we were picking cereal, she tugged at my sleeve. Mama. Yes, baby? She looked around, checking if anyone was close, then whispered, Can we stay somewhere else tonight? My breath hitched. Why, sweetheart? Her eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them fast, as if she wasn't allowed to cry. Because the shadows come when you're not home, and someone opens my door. A chill crawled down my spine. What shadows, Zoe? Who opens your door? She shook her head furiously, biting her lip until it almost bled. I can't say. I can't say. I can't say. My stomach twisted into knots. I knelt in front of her and cupped her cheeks gently. You can always tell me anything, baby. Mama will protect you. She wanted to believe me. I saw it. But something was stopping her. Something bigger than a nightmare. Something that made her carry fear like a second skin. The decision I had been resisting finally landed in my chest like a weight. I needed proof. I needed clarity. I needed to know exactly what happened in my house when I was gone. The idea of installing a hidden camera no longer felt extreme. It felt necessary. That night, after Zoe fell asleep in my bed again, I sat on the edge of the mattress and stared into the darkness. Every instinct inside me was screaming. Something terrible was happening in my home. And it wasn't just Zoe's fear that terrified me. It was the way Mariella looked at her, a mix of control, possession, entitlement, and something else I couldn't put a name to. My mind raced through possibilities. Was Mariella scaring her, hurting her, threatening her, manipulating her? I didn't know. But I knew I couldn't rely on guesswork anymore. I needed the truth, raw and unfiltered, even if it was something I wasn't ready for, even if it broke me. I grabbed my phone and opened a new browser tab. Mini hidden camera for home night vision, nanny cam discrete wall camera. Within minutes, I ordered a small lens-only camera disguised as a decorative nightlight. 2-day shipping. But the tension in my chest didn't let up, not even for a second. I returned to bed and pulled Zoe a little closer. She exhaled softly, relaxing into my arms. As I held her, my heartbeat drummed against her tiny shoulder. Baby, I whispered, smoothing her curls. Mama's going to find out what's happening. I promise. She didn't wake up, but she reached up in her sleep and grabbed my hand, holding it tightly against her chest. That single movement was enough. Enough to make me swear to myself that whatever was happening, whoever was doing this to her, I was going to uncover it, expose it, stop it, even if it meant confronting a darkness I never imagined lived in my own house. The camera I ordered hadn't arrived yet, and waiting for it felt like waiting for a lifeline while drowning. Every hour dragged like a weight attached to my chest. But even without the camera, I told myself I needed to keep watching, listening, paying attention, because something in my home was breathing wrong, and it wasn't my daughter. The next night, I tucked Zoe into my bed again. She held my hand until her eyelids drooped. Even then, she refused to let go completely. Her tiny fingers remained wrapped around mine, as if the moment she loosened her grip, the darkness would snatch her away. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every sound in the house felt amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of wood under the shifting temperature, the occasional car passing by outside. I lay there with my eyes half open, hyper-aware, waiting for something, anything to confirm my fears. Around 1 a.m., Zoe stirred, whimpering. "Mama," she whispered sleepily, "don't let her in." Her. That single word turned my blood cold. Before I could ask her anything, she drifted back off, her breathing uneven and fragile. I swallowed hard. There was no more pretending that these were childish nightmares. Night terrors didn't make children afraid of specific people. They didn't make children beg for locked doors. Someone was coming into her room, and that someone was in my house right now. Later that night, I went to grab a glass of water. My throat was dry and tight from nerves. The house was quiet as I made my way toward the kitchen. Too quiet, eerily quiet. As I walked past the staircase, something made me freeze mid-step. The guest room door, Mariella's room, was open. Not wide open, but cracked, just like Zoe's door had been. A thin streak of warm light spilled into the hallway. Someone was awake. I took a slow breath, willing my heartbeat to calm down long enough for me to think straight. I moved silently toward the door, each footstep calculated. When I reached the crack and leaned forward, I saw the light was coming from the lamp on her nightstand. But Mariella wasn't in the room. The bed was empty. Sheets rumpled. A cold rush of air filled my lungs. Where was she? Before I could take another step, I heard it, a soft sound coming from upstairs. Not loud, barely audible. A floorboard creaking under shifting weight. Someone walking, upstairs, toward the bedroom hallway, toward my daughter. A surge of adrenaline shot through me. I darted up the stairs, but as quietly as I could, heart hammering. When I reached the top, I pressed myself against the wall and listened. Silence. Then another creak. A soft one. Near Zoe's old room. I exhaled shakily and moved inch by inch down the hallway. That's when I saw it. The door to Zoe's room. A room Zoe hadn't slept in since the nightmares began was slightly open. A faint light glowed inside, but I hadn't turned it on. My stomach clenched. Someone was in there. I reached out and pushed the door just enough to peek inside. What I saw wasn't alarming at first. If anything, it was confusing. The nightlight was on. The toys were shifted slightly out of place. The curtains swayed gently, as if someone had brushed past them. But the room was empty, or at least, I thought it was. Because as I stepped inside, my eyes landed on Zoe's closet door. It was open, just a few inches. And inside, I could see a shadow barely visible in the dim light moving ever so slightly. My entire body went cold. Whoever was in that closet wasn't supposed to be there, and they were trying very hard not to be seen. I forced myself a step closer, then another. The closet door shifted, only a fraction of an inch, but enough to make my breath catch. Someone was definitely in there. Mari, I started, but before I could finish her name, the shadow inside the closet jerked like whoever was inside had panicked. I stepped back quickly, pulse thundering. The closet door slowly creaked open. And then, Miss Alyssa? Mariella's face appeared in the doorway, her expression wide-eyed and startled like I was the one intruding. I couldn't even hide my shock. What are you doing in here? I demanded, my voice shaking. She blinked, then forced a small laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, I heard a noise earlier. I thought maybe a window was open. I was just making sure everything was okay. I stared at her. Her explanation didn't make sense. Not even close. That doesn't explain why you were hiding in the closet, I said slowly. She blinked again, too quickly. Oh, no, I wasn't hiding. I was looking for dust. Yes, dust in the closet. My stomach twisted. Dust? At 1:30 in the morning? I felt anger rising in my chest, hot, electric. This is my daughter's bedroom, I said through clenched teeth. You had no reason to be in here. She smiled that same tight, uncomfortable smile. You hired me to keep the house clean, no? Not at night, I snapped. You clean during the day. Mariella stepped out of the closet and smoothed her apron even though she wasn't wearing it. Then she took a step closer, too close. Maybe you are tired, Miss Alyssa, she whispered softly. You are imagining things. My blood simmered. No, I said firmly. For the last few nights, I haven't been imagining anything. Her eyes flickered, just a flicker, but it was all I needed to confirm what I already feared. Mariella didn't like that I was questioning her, and I suddenly realized how stupid it was to confront her alone in the dark hallway. I stepped back. Go to bed, Mariella, now. Her expression darkened for a fraction of a second, barely visible before she nodded and walked past me. But as she passed, she leaned in just enough that her words reached only me. You shouldn't walk around the house so late, she murmured, A chill raced down my spine. Was that a warning, a threat, or a promise? I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat in bed with Zoe curled against me, staring at the door, waiting for another sound, another shadow, another sign that I wasn't imagining the danger crawling through my home. The camera couldn't arrive soon enough, because whatever Mariella was hiding, whatever she was doing, whatever she was waiting for, I knew one thing. The worst was yet to come. And I needed proof before it swallowed my daughter whole. 2 days felt like 2 months. Every hour the camera spent in transit was another hour Zoe slept pressed against my side, too afraid to even close her eyes without gripping my hand. Every hour was another hour with Mariella walking freely in my home. Every hour was another silent threat lingering in the air like smoke. When the package finally arrived, I opened the door so fast the delivery driver flinched. I grabbed the box, locked the door, and carried it to my bedroom with trembling hands. Zoe watched me quietly from the bed, her knees pulled to her chest. "What's that, Mama?" she whispered. "Something that's going to help us," I answered. Her eyes softened, like she wanted to believe me, needed to believe me. I unpacked the camera, disguised as a small, harmless nightlight, and tested it on my phone. Clear image, night vision, audio. Good. For hours I waited for the right moment to set it up. I needed Mariella out of the house, but not suspicious. So when she came upstairs around noon, smiling that eerie, calm smile, I forced my voice to sound normal. "Mariella, I'll be taking Zoe to my sister's for the afternoon," I said. "We'll be back by evening." "Oh?" She tilted her head just slightly. "Everything okay?" "Everything is fine," I lied. "Just family time." Her smile didn't falter, but something in her eyes sharpened, like she was analyzing the meaning behind my words, weighing them, deciding what to do with them. I didn't give her time to decide. I grabbed Zoe, packed a small bag, and left the house. We drove around for nearly an hour, not going anywhere, just driving. I bought Zoe ice cream, though she barely touched it. I stopped at a park, but she didn't want to play. She just kept glancing at the backseat window like she was expecting someone to appear. I hated that my baby had become afraid of shadows. When we finally returned home around 5 p.m., Mariella was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Something simple, chicken and mashed potatoes, but the smell turned my stomach. "Welcome back," she said warmly. "Zoe, I made your favorite." Zoe shrank behind me. Mariella pretended not to notice, but I saw her jaw tighten. I took Zoe upstairs for her bath and bedtime routine, all the while my heart pounded louder with each minute that passed. Because tonight I'd leave Zoe alone in her room again. Tonight the camera would see what I couldn't. Tonight I would finally learn the truth. At 9 p.m., Zoe crawled into her own bed for the first time in days. She was tense, stiff like a board, but she didn't cry. Instead, she whispered, "Mama, will you still hear me if I scream?" I bent down and kissed her forehead. "You won't have to scream, baby. I'm right here." It was the closest to a lie I'd ever told her. I waited until she drifted into a light sleep before stepping out. I turned off the overhead light, leaving only the disguised camera glowing softly. From the hallway, I hesitated. Every instinct in me begged to pick her up and run out of the house with her. But I needed proof. Without proof, Mariella could deny everything. Without proof, no one would believe a terrified 6-year-old and a paranoid, exhausted mother. So I stepped away. My legs felt like lead as I walked to my bedroom. I shut the door almost all the way, then sat on the floor with my back against it. I opened the live feed on my phone and watched. 10:15 p.m. Zoe tossed slightly but stayed asleep. 10:47 p.m. She whimpered once. 11:13 p.m. A faint creak came from the hallway. My stomach clenched. The camera's audio captured it clearly. Slow, careful footsteps approaching Zoe's room. Then the doorknob turned. Just a fraction. Zoe shifted, pulling her bunny closer. The door opened wider. Mariella stepped inside. I dropped the phone in shock, my breath punching out of my chest. My fingers trembled as I grabbed it again. There she was, moving quietly, slowly, purposefully. Her face wasn't warm or gentle like she always showed me. It was blank, emotionless, focused, like she had done this many times before. She walked to Zoe's bed and crouched beside it. She reached out and lightly stroked Zoe's hair. My daughter flinched in her sleep. I gripped the phone until my knuckles turned white. "What are you doing?" I whispered through clenched teeth. Mariella leaned closer. Her hand moved to Zoe's arm. She whispered something I couldn't hear. The audio picked up only a soft hiss. But whatever she said, Zoe reacted instantly. Her small body curled up protectively. Her breathing sped up. Her lips moved, whispering, "No, no, please." And then, the moment that broke me. Mariella slid her hand under the blanket, not in a caretaking way, not in a motherly way, not in any way a grown woman should ever touch a child. I felt the world tilt. I stood up so fast I nearly fell. Tears blurred my vision. Rage, terror, disbelief, all crashed into me at once. But I didn't slam the door open. I didn't run into the room like my instincts screamed at me to do, because the camera was still recording. I needed a few more seconds, just enough to make the evidence undeniable, just enough to destroy her in court. I forced myself to stay still, just a moment longer. Then Mariella leaned closer to Zoe's ear and whispered again. This time the camera picked it up. "Be quiet. You know what happens if you wake your mother." My breath left my body. That was it. I burst out of my room, adrenaline exploding through my veins. The doorknob slammed in my hand as I shoved Zoe's door open. Mariella spun around, eyes wide, caught completely off guard. "What are you doing?" I screamed. Zoe sat up immediately, crying, scrambling away from Mariella. Mariella stood, her face pale. "You were not just anything," I roared, stepping between her and my child. "Get away from her." She opened her mouth to speak again, but I pointed to the hallway. "Out now." For the first time since she entered our lives, Mariella didn't argue. She walked out slowly, stiffly, like she was calculating something, calculating me. But I didn't care anymore. I grabbed Zoe, held her tight, whispering softly into her hair. "You're safe now, baby. Mama's got you. Mama saw everything." And with trembling hands, I clutched the phone against my chest. The camera had seen it all, and that meant Mariella's time was over. Zoe cried in my arms, long after Mariella disappeared down the hallway. Her small fists clung to my shirt, her body shaking like she'd been holding that terror inside for weeks, maybe longer. I held her close, rocking her gently, even as my own hands trembled with the aftershock of what I'd seen. "It's okay, baby," I whispered over and over, kissing the top of her head. "You're safe now. I promise you're safe." But safety was temporary. Safety lasted only as long as Mariella stayed on the other side of that door, and only as long as she didn't realize I had evidence. I needed to get Zoe out of that house, and I needed to do it right now. I grabbed my phone and turned the screen so I could review the footage again. Blurry but unmistakable. Her hands, her movements, her whispers, all time-stamped and recorded in crystal-clear night vision. My stomach twisted violently. I didn't want to watch, but I needed to make sure the recording saved properly. One corrupted file could mean the difference between justice and a monster walking free. The video saved. Thank God. With my daughter still clinging to me, I reached for the closet with one free hand and pulled out a duffel bag. I didn't bother being quiet. Mariella already knew something was wrong. Silence wouldn't fix that. "Mama, are we leaving?" Zoe whispered, wiping tears with her sleeve. "Yes, baby," I said. "We're going somewhere safe." "Will she come with us?" Her voice cracked. My heart nearly broke. No, never again. That was a promise I carved into my bones. I packed essentials, clothes, Zoe's medicine, her favorite pajamas, the bunny she loved so much. My hands shook so much I dropped half the items twice, but adrenaline kept me moving. Halfway through packing, I heard footsteps at the end of the hallway. Slow, heavier than before. No attempt to hide the sound. Mariella. She wasn't going to let us leave quietly. I turned around, positioning myself between Zoe and the doorway. Mariella appeared in the hall, her face pale under the dim light, but her expression wasn't panicked. It was calm. Too calm. "Miss Alyssa," she said softly, "we should talk." I didn't give her a chance. "You need to leave my house. Right now." She blinked, sighing like she was the one dealing with a disobedient child. "Zoe had another nightmare. You misunderstand." "Don't," I snapped, my voice trembling with fury. "Lie to me." Her jaw tightened. "You don't know what you saw," she murmured. "Oh, but I did." "Get out." She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "If you call the police—" "I already have everything I need," I cut in, lifting my phone. "You're done." For the first time, a crack formed in her confident facade. Her gaze shifted to my phone, then back to me. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You won't ruin me," she said quietly, "and you will never touch my daughter again." I held her stare without blinking. Finally, she stepped back. Slowly, like she was walking away from prey, she wanted to sink her teeth into one last time and disappeared down the stairs. I didn't trust that she'd actually leave the house. Not yet. Not until I heard the front door slam. Seconds felt like hours. Then, bang. The door shut. Zoe jumped, burying her face in my chest. "It's okay," I whispered. "She's gone." But the shaking in my hands refused to stop. I set Zoe down only long enough to slip into my shoes and grab my purse. I backed down the stairs, keeping her behind me, my eyes locked on every shadow like it might suddenly reach out and pull her away. When we stepped outside, the cold night air hit my face like a slap. I half expected Mariella to be hiding by the bushes, half expected her to jump out and grab us. My paranoia was a live wire buzzing under my skin. I opened the car door and secured Zoe in her seat with shaking hands. "Mama, where are we going?" she whispered. "To Auntie Kim's," I said. "You remember her? With the big dog and the pink kitchen?" Zoe nodded weakly. "Is it safe there?" "Yes," I said firmly. "It's safe." I pulled out of the driveway faster than I should have, glancing in the mirror every few seconds. Every pair of headlights behind us felt like a threat. Every shadow made my heart lurch. It wasn't until we reached the highway that I finally exhaled. Safe. For the moment. My sister Kim opened the door in her pajamas, confused until she saw Zoe's swollen eyes and my trembling hands. Then her face hardened with that familiar sisterly rage. "What happened?" she demanded. I didn't answer. Not with words. I held up my phone. She played the video. It took less than 15 seconds for her hand to fly to her mouth and tears to fill her eyes. "Oh my God. Alyssa," she whispered. "We need to go to the police right now." "I know," I said, "but Zoe needs to sleep first. She hasn't slept properly in days." Kim nodded, helping me carry Zoe inside. We tucked her into Kim's guest bed, and she fell asleep almost immediately, exhaustion finally overpowering fear. When the door closed behind us, Kim pulled me into the living room. "Call 911 now," she insisted. "I will," I said, "but I need you to stay with Zoe." "Of course," she said, grabbing my hands. "She'll be safe with me." That was the first time I felt like I could breathe since this nightmare started. I stepped outside and dialed. 911, what is your emergency?" "This is Alyssa Carter," I said, voice trembling. "I have video proof that my maid, that she hurt my daughter." The operator kept me calm, took details, asked about Zoe, asked about Mariella. I gave them everything. A patrol car was dispatched immediately. "Don't return to your home," the operator instructed firmly. "Stay with your daughter. Officers will go to the property." "Thank you," I whispered. When I ended the call, the night suddenly felt quieter, heavier. But for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. Real control. I went back inside and sat next to Zoe, brushing hair away from her forehead as she slept peacefully, truly peacefully, for the first time in what felt like forever. I watched her chest rise and fall, reminding myself she was safe, finally safe. Tomorrow there would be interviews, detectives, paperwork, maybe court. There would be emotional scars, hers and mine. There would be a long road ahead. But tonight she was alive, untouched, and out of danger. And Mariella? By now, the police were already on their way to arrest her. I leaned down and kissed Zoe's cheek. "Mama's here," I whispered, "and no one will ever hurt you again." But deep inside, I knew something else. This nightmare wasn't over. Not yet. Not until justice was done, fully, publicly, and permanently. And I was ready to see it through. The night the police arrested Mariella was the first time in weeks that I slept without waking up gasping for air. Not peacefully. No, peaceful sleep was still far from me, but without terror sinking its teeth into my thoughts. Zoe slept beside me in my sister's guest room, curled against my arm like she used to before everything changed. Her small breaths were soft, steady, safe, safe. A word I hadn't truly felt in my bones for too long. I stroked her curls gently, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. The next morning, detectives arrived at Kim's house to speak with me. 2 officers, one tall and stern, the other with a kinder expression that made the room feel a little less cold. Detective Harris, the kinder one, folded his hands on the table. "Ms. Carter," he began, "we reviewed the footage you sent. That's more than enough to proceed with charges." His eyes softened with something like sorrow. "I'm very sorry this happened to your daughter." I nodded, feeling my throat tighten. "Thank you. I just want her to be okay." "She will be," he said firmly, "but she'll need time. Kids are resilient, and she has you." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until it was said aloud. The detectives asked more questions. When the behavior began, what Zoe said, what I noticed, how Mariella acted. Every detail I recalled felt like reopening a wound, but I answered everything. For Zoe. Then came the part I dreaded. "Once she's awake, we'll need to speak with Zoe too," Detective Harris said carefully. "A child psychologist will be present. It'll be gentle. We won't pressure her." My heart clenched. The idea of my daughter reliving even a fraction of what happened felt unbearable. But I also knew her voice was important, her safety was important, her healing was important. So I nodded, even though my chest ached. "I'll be with her," I said, "through everything." The interview took place in Kim's living room. A child therapist named Dr. Lane sat beside Zoe with crayons and paper to make her comfortable. Zoe drew her bunny at first, then a house, then a small figure in a dark dress standing in a doorway. My breath caught. Dr. Lane spoke softly. "Who's this, sweetheart?" Zoe hesitated, looked at me. I smiled gently. "It's okay, baby," I whispered. "You can tell them the truth. You're safe." For the first time, Zoe nodded without fear. "That's Mari," she said quietly. "And what is she doing there?" Dr. Lane asked. "She comes into my room at night," Zoe said. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "She says if I talk, Mama will get hurt. She says shadows will take me." My eyes burned. Kim squeezed my shoulder hard. "She told you that?" Dr. Lane asked softly. Zoe nodded again. That was enough. Enough for the detectives. Enough for me. Enough to bury Mariella under every legal consequence she deserved. 3 weeks later, court proceedings began. Mariella came in wearing a beige jumpsuit, her hair unkempt, her face stripped of the gentle facade she once used like a mask. When she saw me holding Zoe's hand in the hallway outside the courtroom, her expression didn't soften. It hardened, cold, vicious, unmasked. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Not with the truth on my side, not with my daughter beside me. Inside the courtroom, the footage played. Not on the big screen. The judge didn't want Zoe exposed to that, but on a private monitor. I watched the judge's expression transform from neutrality to horror. "This is highly disturbing," the judge said, voice shaking with controlled anger. Mariella's lawyer tried to argue mental instability, stress, misinterpretation, but nothing could erase reality. Nothing could undo the recording. Nothing could silence Zoe's whispered testimony. By the end of the hearing, the judge closed the folder and looked directly at Mariella. "You violated every boundary of trust, every duty of care, every instinct of basic humanity. You are hereby sentenced." The sentence was long. Long enough that Zoe would be grown, safe, and far beyond Mariella's reach by the time that woman ever saw daylight again, if she ever did. Relief washed through me like warm sunlight after a storm. It didn't undo the pain, but it ended the threat. We moved shortly after. New neighborhood, new routines, new locks on every door, new nightlights. One Zoe chose herself, shaped like stars. The first night in our new home, Zoe crawled into my lap and rested her head against my chest. "Mama," she whispered, "is the bad woman gone forever?" I kissed her forehead. "She can never hurt you again," I said. "Not ever." She let out a long, shaky breath, like she'd been holding it in for weeks, and finally relaxed. That was the moment I knew we could start healing. Therapy helped. Slowly, Zoe began to sleep more soundly. Slowly, she played again. Slowly, she laughed. Not the forced, nervous laugh she had used to hide her fear, but her real laugh. The one that twinkled like bells and warmed every room. One night, about a month after the court decision, she tugged on my sleeve as I tucked her into bed. "Mama?" "Yes, baby? Can I sleep in my room tonight? By myself?" My heart squeezed, not out of fear, but pride. "Only if you want to," I said gently. "You don't have to rush." Zoe smiled, a small, brave smile. "I'm not scared anymore," she whispered, "because you saw me and you heard me." My eyes filled with tears. I hugged her tight. "Always," I whispered. "Mama will always see you, always hear you." She fell asleep that night under the glow of her star-shaped nightlight, her bunny tucked beside her. Peacefully, safely, finally. And now, to every parent watching, listening, or reading this, if I've learned anything from this nightmare, it's this. Always listen to your child. Even when their fears seem small, even when the danger isn't obvious, even when you want to believe it's nothing. Believe them. Protect them. Check on them. Trust your instinct, that silent alarm in your chest that warns you before reason catches up. Because monsters don't always hide under beds. Sometimes they walk through your front door with a smile and a resume. My daughter is safe today because I finally listened. I finally paid attention. I finally acted. And if you take anything from our story, let it be this. Never hesitate to protect your child. Never ignore the signs. And never let anyone convince you that your fear for your child is just imagination. It's love. It's instinct. It's truth. And sometimes, it's the thing that saves their life.